So, of course, Brad, thank you for coming. You're a six-time national champion at Minnesota. So, sort of just give us a look into what made you come to coach here, and of course, or at Minnesota, and what else influenced you to go coach. Of course, you started off at a Division III school, and now you're at the Division I level.
Yeah, actually, when I was in high school, I actually knew that I wanted to be a teacher and a coach. I had some really influential coaches in my life and some teachers in my life growing up, and really wanted to be that for other kids. And so I got my teaching degree right out of college, and was a phy ed and health teacher there, also a high school coach in volleyball and girls hockey, and was fortunate enough to get a shot as an assistant coach in 2001 here at the University of Minnesota, and then become the head coach 7 years later. But really just wanted to impact kids, impact people, and through teaching and coaching, and just felt that was an incredible way to do it.
So, you mentioned you were an assistant coach at the University of Minnesota for a while there. Um, so I know coaching philosophies and styles have changed a lot since when you first started your coaching career and when you were playing. So, what is your coaching philosophy? What is your coaching philosophy, and how has it evolved over the years?
Well, when I first took over as the head coach, my philosophy was really all about winning. It was all about the outcome. Felt a lot of pressure after coaching, being an assistant coach. We had won the national championship in 2004, 2005. I took over as the head coach in 2007, and just really felt like I needed to prove myself after taking over for Laura Halderson. And so really it was about winning. It was about winning the national championship. And after a couple of years of not winning it, making it to the Frozen Four and having super successful years, really had to kind of look in the mirror and say, okay, is this really what coaching is all about? Is it just about wins and losses? And ultimately came to the realization that it's not. Our players' journey needed to be about more than just winning their last hockey game. And so, for us, it was really important to come up with some values, focus more on the process, and in turn really become more relational with our players, and that's where we are at today.
And so, of course, I do have another question concerning coaching here. So, of course, you've had some great talent that has come out of Minnesota, including Taylor Heisey, and of course, right now you're top forward and Abby Murphy. So what are the specific traits that you look for in players when you're building your team and going out there to recruit players for your team?
Well, I think it's kind of twofold. First, when we're evaluating, we're really evaluating on their ability, their talent. Are they good enough to play at the University of Minnesota? There's some intangibles like their work ethic, them as a teammate, their body language, things like that. But ultimately we're trying to determine if they're a player that we want in our program, that would be successful in our program. After that evaluation time, then it becomes more about them as people, trying to figure out more about them and their families. Are they going to be a good fit for us? Are we going to be a good fit for them? In regards to recruiting really, really good people, first and foremost, that's what we want to do. We want kids that come from great families, and we feel like we've had a lot of success in doing that.
So, and on top of that, so I do want to ask this question. So I know you have some international players there at Minnesota. So how is the recruiting process for that? Do you guys have to, because I know I've read a little bit here and there about the player glut that's in the NCAA concerning players, where some players are not, they're Division I talent, but they don't really get a chance to play Division I because of how many or how few schools really have, a program. So how do you determine that? And then is there a lot of tape you guys get to see? Are you guys having issues with, because I know when I worked at the University of Alabama in Huntsville, with their NCAA Division I program that they had, we had a lot of issues with getting the European transcripts translated to
Sure.
US scripts.
Yeah, I mean, there are some unique circumstances that are different than recruiting a player from Canada or the United States. the good thing about women's hockey is that it continues to be so small that these best European players are oftentimes playing on their U18 teams or playing on their national teams as well. And so we have opportunities to watch them when they come to the United States. At times, we will go over to Europe and watch some of the different tournaments and get a look at them there. But mainly it's trying to figure out of those players that again are very talented in Europe, how many of them want to come over, which ones of them want to come over, which ones want to stay and play in the Swedish league or the Finnish league or the Swiss league, and so as we get to know players and communicate with them, it's been a really good thing for us to have these European players on our team. They bring a different kind of attitude, different culture to our group, which is really, really positive. So oftentimes there are people that will recommend these players from Europe to us so that we can kind of get a look at them. But overall, it's been really fun having these different Europeans on our team.
And so I do have a question on more team dynamics, I guess, now at this point. So what role do you believe does communication play in a successful team, like as in Minnesota? And then can you also share an experience where you resolved the conflict with the team?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I think communication is kind of that golden goose a little bit, in the sense that it's really, really. We all as coaches know that we need to communicate. We try and communicate well, but there are many different ways to take communication, if that makes sense. And so, again, we try and be more relational in the sense of let's build these relationships with players, so that they know that they're cared for, that they're known, that they're valued, that they're loved. And if we do that, then they know that we're coming generally from a genuine area to speak into their lives a little bit, so we can have those harder conversations. They receive those hopefully differently than just a coach yelling and screaming at them, but instead coming from building that relationship, that they know that we have their best interests in mind. In saying that, it's every coach needs to continue to work on their communication, but I think players also have to work on how they receive it as well, right? And so there's messages that we'll send individually. There's messages that we'll send as a team, and if we send a message as a team, each player might take it a little differently than what was even intended. And so it's a difficult thing, but certainly something that every coach and our staff included strives for every day to talk with our players, to get to know them more and more, but also to have those honest conversations with them when we see that they're maybe veering off of what we're wanting them to do.
Yeah. And so I know you guys this season so far. You guys have a pretty good record this year. Really hoping to see you guys in the Frozen Four this year.
We are too.
I'm definitely. It was your team definitely plays really really hard. I got to see that at Ohio State. So you guys fight to tooth and nail with Ohio State at this point.
Yeah.
I do have another question, and sort of reverting back to the recruitment side of it. So I know with Minnesota, there's Minnesota State, there's St. Thomas, there's St. Cloud State, Minnesota Duluth. How do you guys handle recruiting players within the state of Minnesota when you have that much competition from different schools?
Yeah, it's a good question. The good news for us is that we're the big school in Minnesota. We're a Big Ten school. We have great resources. A lot of players grow up wanting to play for the Gophers here in Minnesota, and but that doesn't mean that we don't have competition. To your point, and so again, it's trying to recruit the best players that we can, the best people that we can, and put them all together to be a successful team. I mean, every player on our team was a captain on their high school team, and so there's only one puck to go around, and so it's important for us to again talk about our values, talk about the opportunity to be a part of something that's bigger than yourself, be a part of a team that's working towards the goal of winning championships and being successful. So, we feel like we've got great facilities, great staff, great coaches, and obviously a Big Ten university with excellent academics. So, we just try and promote what we have. University of Minnesota isn't the place for everybody, but it certainly is for a lot of players, and the ones that are on our team have always wanted to wear the M and to be a Gopher, and there's a lot of passion that they play with because of that.
And so, getting back to something you talked about with just a little earlier, a moment ago, the development, how you guys send messages, to certain players at some time, and then at different times, it's a team message you guys send, right? Um, so, how do you approach the player development for different skill levels? Because every player is going to play at a different skill level, and all the different systems that all your players have been in, because
Yeah.
some are more at the skill level of the Canadian system, and some are at the U.S. system, and some are at the European system. So how do you sort of combine all that together?
Yeah, it's a great question. We've got a really really good coaching staff. Mitch Baker, Jess Scott, Boom May. They love video. So a lot of things are taught through video, individual video, as well as our team. We have skill sessions 3 times a week that our players sign up for to come out and work on different skills. Because we have Ritter Arena and it's our own ice surface. Players can come, not during our kind of practice slot and ask for us for extra help. So, there's all these different ways to help make our players better. And that's not even including, of course, our shooting room or our weight room or things like that. But, everybody's always striving to get better here. And we've got really, really good people to help along the way. And so, that's really been a focus of ours is the video and the skill level here over the last, and the skill drills opportunities for individual and team skills over the last number of years.
And then, of course, you do have some young players, including Chloe Primario, I believe.
Primerano. Yep.
Primano. Okay, sorry, I wasn't sure how to say that name for there for a minute, and I was like,
No
but
problem.
she's a very young player. Of course, she's 17 years old at the moment. She's
Yep.
been named to the Canadian team here against the rivalry series against the U.S.
Yep.
So, you know, even beyond her, like you do get some young players, definitely out of Minnesota. So what advice do you give to these young players that are aspiring to play at higher levels?
Well, Chloe, I mean, she's a special talent and somebody that all of our players want to play at the next level, right? And so our goal is to help them reach their dreams from a hockey standpoint, from an academic standpoint. And so it's really important for us to again treat them as individuals, and help uh, kind of look at their game and find where there's maybe some holes that they can get better at. Again, we've had a lot of success with our players going on to their national teams and their Olympic teams, and so it's important for us to break those things down, for them to know that we care about them. We want them to reach the level that they want to get to, and so it's important for us, again, through the video, through the skill work, through the team game, to help elevate their game so that if they do that, that's going to help us at the University of Minnesota, but it's also going to help them try and pursue their dreams of playing for their Olympic team as well.
And then on top of that, so I know I think it was 2 years ago, you guys were in the Frozen Four and had to play Wisconsin, your border rival, there in Minnesota, and that was a very interesting game. I think it was 4 overtime periods that you guys had to play there.
That was actually last year when
What
we
was
were
that
in
last year?
the quarterfinal against Clarkson. That one went
Oh,
four
Clarkson.
overtimes, but
Okay.
when we were in the Frozen Four the year before against Wisconsin, that one did go into one overtime. But
One overtime. Okay, sorry.
yeah,
So how important is mental toughness in hockey, and how do you help players develop it? Because I mean that is mentally tough. You play 4 overtime periods against Clarkson last year,
Yeah.
and then you don't end up advancing to the quarterfinals. And how did that? Because I know there were a lot of seniors on that team a little bit.
Yep.
So
Yeah. I mean, mental toughness is critical in any sport, in particular hockey. And again, I think as you look at going into a 4 overtime game, it's about trying to stay fresh. It's about your preparation and going back to that. Like that's where confidence is built. Um, but certainly, the tougher you are mentally, the better off you're going to be, not just in hockey and sports, but in life as well, right? Because the things that are happening to them in a hockey game is tough in the moment, but there's going to be a lot tougher things that come down the pipe after you graduate and get a job and have a family and kids and things like that. So, um, you know, that's one of our values is being tough. We talk about it a lot. We work on different, uh, talk about different areas of opportunity for us to be more tough, mentally tougher in not just on the ice, but off the ice. And that's definitely something that's critically important for all elite level athletes.
and so how do you prepare your team for specific opponents? Whatever it's Bemidji State, St. Cloud State, Ohio State, Wisconsin. Some of those bigger games in the season that can determine where you're seated, and whatever you're hosting, a
Yeah,
home game in the NCAA or in the NCAA tournament or so.
yeah. Again, we're pretty regimented in our preparation, and so we'll do a pre-scout video each week on a Thursday prior to our Friday Saturday series. After the game on Friday, break down film again, show the team on Saturday. Again, areas that we were good, areas that we can clean up for Saturday's game. Um, so that's how we kind of prepare as coaches. We look ahead as well, and so the WCHA is so good, and we know how a lot of teams play, and so we're doing drills in practice um, to help us try and exploit teams, or here's some things that we know that they like to do, and so here's how we need to handle it so that once we get into the game, they're very prepared and ready to go.
And so, what approaches do you have for in-game adjustments? I know a few coaches that I've worked with. If we were getting really badly blown out, they would just keep the same lines and not switch out any of the goaltenders or anything else. They didn't make any in-game adjustments, and they just sort of expected everything to be the same. But then,
Yeah.
can you also give an example of that?
Well, I think it's every game is different, right? So, um, this year we were playing Wisconsin. We were at 1-0 going into the third, and they scored 4 goals in 4.5 minutes in the third, right? And it's like before there was a timeout called. Um, you can try changing lines. We pulled our goaltender. There's different things, and sometimes when the snowball is moving downhill, um, against you have to find ways to kind of stop the bleeding, whether that's a timeout or line changes or pulling a goalie or whatever it is. So, that for us is we're always looking to make in-game adjustments, but we're also pretty confident in how we need to play. And so oftentimes our adjustments aren't necessarily, hey, we need to change our forecheck or we need to change our D zone. It's no, we need to do these things better. And so how can we get our team to do that? So there's multiple ways to try and make those adjustments. We tend to make adjustments more in between periods and versus on the fly. But again, some people will think you're making adjustments, other people won't, and everybody's going to have an opinion on it. So it doesn't really matter what they think.
And then I know a lot of different coaches. They use data and they use some of the game performances that they see from players. Have you ever had, or do you really analyze a game performance and use data for improvement, or make a change in the lineup for the very next game or so?
Yeah, for sure. We get instat reports the day after our game. We obviously watch our games back. Who's playing well, who's maybe needs a kick in the rear or things like that. But overall, it's we're into the analytics, probably not overly heavy. As Brad Childress used to say, we use the eye test a fair amount, right? We see these players all the time, and so we know when they're playing well, when they need a little more. And so that's really how we do a lot of our evaluation. We'll use some of the stats and the analytics, but oftentimes it's really us talking as a staff to figure out where we want to go for the next game.
And then, you've been a coach for a while now, since the 2000s at Minnesota. So you're now going on 24 years of coaching at the University of Minnesota. So, as a coach, what's been the most challenging season as a coach, and what did you learn from it?
Yeah, good question. They all bring their different challenges in different ways, but they're also all super enjoyable by the end of it. And so it oftentimes I think people will think, well, if you win a championship, then it was super enjoyable. If you don't, then there was something wrong, and that's not always the case. I mean, I look at our team last year. We had graduated 11 seniors that year before. A lot of teams really didn't think that we were going to do much, and we were able to, be a whisker away from a Frozen Four berth. And so certainly we've had some great years as well, and won multiple championships. But ultimately, it just comes down to the team culture, and every year that's different. As coaches, we kind of set the tone for that, and like I said, we have our values and really strive to live those out each and every day. And that's the goal. And sometimes that will help result in a lot of wins, and other times it doesn't. But there isn't a time at the University of Minnesota where I haven't enjoyed the opportunity to be their coach and to try and win some hockey games.
Um, can you share with just one memorable moment that stood out to you from your coaching career, in general?
Yeah, I mean, so many memories come to mind with our alums. They the way that they continue to keep in contact with us, getting invited to their weddings, different events that they're speaking at, things like that. Obviously, when in 2012-13, when we went 41-0, the only women's hockey program to do it, and to win at home in the Frozen Four was, honestly, it was a ton of joy, but even more relief that we actually pulled it off and weren't the team that went 39-1 or 40-1. And so but that obviously was an incredible time. Anytime we're in the Frozen Four, and that Frozen Four is at Ritter Arena like it is this coming year, it's pretty special having so many people there cheering for you, and the opportunity to win it at home is really special.
And then where's some of the misconceptions that people have about coaching, college hockey in general?
Um, well, I think maybe that the players know everything. Like, they're high level athletes, they're playing at the Division 1 level, and so they're able to. A lot of people think, oh, they must be like professionals. They just know uh, they know it all when it comes to hockey, and they just don't. They're always wanting to learn. They're always wanting to get better. And that's one of the great things about coaching at the collegiate level is every year you're taking a group of individuals that's new and trying to help shape and mold them into what you want them to be, as a team and as a group of people. And I think that's one of the most enjoyable things and opportunities as a coach is to take this group and mold them into what that they can become.
And then, so I do want to ask this because I know WCHA has changed a lot since it first started. Have you really seen a big change in how teams prepare for the University of Minnesota because of all the national championships that they've won, and including your 41-0 season? Or do you sort of sometimes see the teams prepare the same way they did last year, or even try to go and poach players from you before they even enter the transfer portal?
No, I mean, there's not a lot of the poaching and things like that. I don't think that really goes on in women's hockey. Obviously, the portal is a thing, and so when girls enter their name into that, that's when coaches start going to work. But um, I think the biggest thing about the WCHA is so many of the best players end up playing in this league, and tremendous coaches in our league, and coaching staffs, and so um, they make it really really hard, just like we want to make it hard, to get beat, right? And so it's really important that you show up and that you compete, and that you battle for that 60 minutes and give yourself the best opportunity and the best chance. But there isn't a team in our league now that's not capable of beating somebody else. You look no further than this past weekend at Ohio State and St. Thomas. Ohio State, one of the top teams in the country. St. Thomas maybe not considered that yet, and they go to overtime, and Ohio State has to score on the power play to win it. And so there's just no guarantees. Back in the 2000s, if you had the more skilled and talented team, you were probably winning 7, 8, 9, nothing, and those days are long gone at this point. And so um, just a lot of good players and a lot of good coaching staffs that know how to coach.
And so, talking about St. Thomas in general, I know they're in Minneapolis, correct? Also,
Yep. They're about 10, 15 minutes away from us.
so when you guys go and play those games, because I know last year you guys played at the Excel Center against uh, how much of an impact do those games have on your guys' recruiting process? Because I know I've seen videos all over my social media where a high school hockey game in Minnesota sells out the Excel Center, and obviously I think you guys did too last year
Yeah,
when
we
you guys
played
played.
at the X. We didn't sell it out, but had a good crowd of a few thousand. But um, yeah, I mean, it with St. Thomas moving from the D3 level to the D1 level, they now are another viable option for a lot of Minnesota kids, and so it brings in more recruiting battles and recruiting challenges. And again, they're wanting to get the best players from Minnesota, as are we, and so it's important that we continue to evaluate the right way and get the players in here that want to be Gophers and are wanting and willing to make an impact in a positive way. So St. Thomas certainly has elevated their profile by going Division 1 and being in the Twin Cities area here.
Yeah. And so I know you've had you probably had the opportunity last year. I know when the PWHL came online, it was a brand new league. They were still looking for coaches and GMs. So what made you want to stay at the University of Minnesota compared to going to the PWHL to coach at a professional um, women's hockey league level when you're one of your top forwards from a few years ago, or not a few years ago, last year went to the team here over there in Minnesota to the
Yeah.
Frost.
Well, nobody asked me to be their coach, first of all. Um, and so, I love coaching college. I love the opportunity again to be coaching at the University of Minnesota at a very high level, with great players that we've recruited and brought on board here, and so my hope is to be here a long time and to continue doing what we're doing here, with our staff and with our group. So that's the goal. Is PWHL in my future? I have no idea. Um, Certainly not in the near future, but really happy with where I'm at. My family has grown up here around our players, around our program, and that's really important to me as well.
And then, so talking about the PWHL, what changes do you see coming to the women's side of hockey right now? With the PWHL coming online, they're talking about adding two new franchises here soon.
Hmm.
How do you think that's going to change the landscape of the women's college hockey world?
I think the biggest thing is more opportunity, right? There's now going to be 40 more players, 50 more players that are going to be drafted or brought over from Europe or whatever, and so That's super positive. Obviously, the PWHL has done a great job here over the last year um, with their fan bases, with their marketing, with their advertising. I mean, here in Minnesota, averaging over 7,000 a game at the XL Energy Center, where the Minnesota Wild play, is pretty cool and pretty special. And so, again, it's just opportunity for these players that I'm coaching now, that we're coaching, players that will be coming in the future, to now have an opportunity to pursue something outside of college hockey once they graduate, other than just their national teams. And so that's huge. There were many years where players wanted to continue to play and they weren't able to because there just wasn't a viable league or a sustainable league. And so now that the PWHL has come around, it's pretty cool for them to have the opportunity to continue to play hockey and make a livable wage for the most part.
Yeah. And so I do also have this question. This last summer, I don't know if you saw it, but the one of the Illich daughters for Mike Illich, she's making the point to to give Michigan a women's hockey program. How much of an impact do you think that will have on the University of Minnesota should it come online? And then, in recruitment wise, and then of course, if they were to join the WCHA, because they're talking about either joining WCHA or the AAHA. So
Yeah, I mean, there's been talk about Michigan starting a program for many years, and so I'm really hopeful that it happens. That would be great for the state of Michigan. It would be great um, for women's hockey in general as well. So the more teams that we can add, certainly a team like Michigan with their footprint in the state of Michigan and their academic footprint as well as an institution, I think is really important. And again, it would just provide more opportunities. And so, the more schools that can add teams, the better, in my opinion. And again, more opportunity, and we want to continue to grow the women's game, and having somebody with the reputation of a University of Michigan would be huge.
And so, one more thing I do want to ask you about before I go a little deeper into some more stuff. The NIL came along a few years ago for players. Have you seen any of that impact in the women's side of college hockey? Because I know I've had a few people tell me it hasn't had an impact yet on the men's side. It has more so on the bigger sports like football and basketball.
Yeah,
Have you seen an impact on that just yet?
I would say where you see it most is certainly with the basketballs, with football as well. There's players that I think on a lot of the Big Ten teams that are making a couple $100 here, a few $100 there, with jersey sales or T-shirt sales or things like that. But I would say that there hasn't. I don't see it being a huge deal quite yet in the women's hockey landscape. Um, Compared to what it is in football and in the basketballs. So I'm sure it'll come as we continue on, but as of right now, it hasn't made a huge impact.
And then, so I tend to keep up a lot with the USA Hockey numbers that they have on their membership list that they for signups and all that. So what initiatives do you think are going to be very important for the future of hockey coming up? Because I know Minnesota's been on there. It's actually the top state in all of hockey, of course, being the hockey state of the U.S. So, what's going to be the important to keep growing player or to keep having those numbers grow and keeping players in the sport of hockey, and then you know what ideas do you think could help grow the sport of hockey in the southern areas of the country?
Well, I guess I can't speak to the southern areas, just not being there. Obviously, the having NHL teams down there, and I think of in Arizona, they've got the Arizona Kachinas with Lindsey Fry, former U.S. National team player, helping organize that organization. Obviously the Coyotes have left Phoenix, and so I'm not sure if that will hurt their numbers as they continue to go. But um, hockey is an expensive sport, and I think any time that associations and organizations can keep hockey the cost of hockey down, more and more kids are willing to try it. Here in Minnesota, we have so many outdoor rinks and lakes that are frozen during the winter, and so a lot of young girls and boys really grow up playing on the pond and at these rinks. But the more that we can keep it affordable, I think the better opportunity we have to keep girls and boys, quite frankly, and those families involved in the sport, because it's not just buying a basketball and going and shooting hoops. It's a lot different with all the equipment and things that are necessary to rent ice and those types of things. It can get pretty expensive pretty quickly.
And then, so on top of that, so I do have this question because I did sort of touch on this topic a little earlier. The player glut that is in college hockey right now. Where there's so many players that are having to, where they have to go play an extra year somewhere else, or as you mentioned in Europe, having to go play either in the Finnish league or the Swedish league. Um, what do you think is going to be important to grow the sport of hockey in the United States on the women's side too? Because I know there are a little bit few. There's a fewer schools in the NCAA on the women's side than there are on the men's side. Because I think the men's got 64 teams at the
Yep.
moment.
Yep. Yeah.
So
I think again, we need to keep the programs that we have first of all, and again, it's an expensive sport to have at a university, with the scholarships, with the equipment budgets, with the travel budgets, things like that. And so it's vitally important that we keep funding and maintaining the schools that do have women's hockey. And then we need other schools like a Michigan to step up. And in today's landscape of revenue sharing and things like that are coming to student athletes, it might hinder some athletic departments from starting women's hockey programs or starting other sports. But it's just critical that there continues to be opportunity for these players and their families, to be a part of these programs and these organizations.
and then so I do have this question because it was mentioned in an article I was just more recently reading about the Illich family's daughter who is being the big pusher right now to put Michigan in a position to bring them a women's hockey program. Of course, they only have the one rink on campus with the one locker room, and they've sort of ran out of space there in Ann Arbor. Been there a few times, and so um, on top of that, they were mentioning that the there have been players from Michigan that are leaving Michigan to go play at different schools. So have you ever tried recruiting in Michigan?
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's some really good hockey players in Michigan, and I don't know how many players we've had over the years specifically from Michigan, but I know we've had a few in our time here at Minnesota. And so again, anytime we're gonna try and take players from wherever they're from, if we think that they could add value to our team and we can add value to them. So, but Michigan is certainly one of those places in the United States that has a lot of youth programs and develops a lot of really good hockey players.
And then just one question because I know you guys just played Bemidji State this last weekend. You guys swept them going into. So how much of the confidence that you guys have from one game does it translate into the next game? And do you have any superstitions in general before going into a game?
Not no, not too many. It's I think it's obviously if you win the night before, it's going to be significantly tougher the next night, and that's just part of being in the WCHA, and we know we're going to get everybody's best when we're at the University of Minnesota as well, and so certainly when you play well the first night, you want to try and carry that momentum on to the next night. But you know, it's it's a new game, right? The next day, the game starts 0-0, and so you never know what you're gonna get, so to speak, right? Because you can't really control the other team at all. So that's again why it comes back to our own preparation and making sure that we're doing our job and preparing well, so that when the puck drops, we're ready to go.
Well, that's going to be it for today, Coach Brad. Thank you for coming on to the podcast, and hope to see you soon.
All right, thanks, Patrick. Take care.
You too. Bye.